never done anything quite like this. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Now this is normally as far as it goes, so just give it a little bit of clearance.
Yeah? And then I let go and it'll stop now?
Yes, just release it back to the middle now.
Okay, here we go.
We hope it stops, and it does.
Right.
You can rest and relax now for a moment.
Now there is... Oh, that's wonderful. Gladys, the Thames barge. What a lovely boat. Look at that.
An old Thames barge sailing under one of the greatest bridges in the world. And what's my photographic record of this place going to be? Well, it's obvious.
Right, I'm going to take my picture of my bridge, which I opened.
And there it is, sunset at Tower Bridge. No wonder she's become one of the great symbols of London. For more details on Britain's first photo album and to find out about exciting events related to the series,
The 21st century brought a massive change to Cardiff Bay, a change which continues with the opening of the BBC's new drama village, situated in the historic Roath Basin. Covering nearly 2,000 square feet of studio space, it's a state-of-the-art home to Casualty, Doctor Who, Pobl Cwm, and Upstairs Downstairs. Tonight we're going to go behind the scenes of this exciting new development and delve into the history of this iconic Welsh location. Cardiff Bay is steeped in history. What began as a salt marsh became a harbour used for the shipping of iron. But it wasn't until the late 1700s that one man recognised the bay's potential. The second Marquis of Bute transformed it into the largest coal exporting dock in the world. The bustling port attracted other exporters and merchants, and soon Cardiff entered into a golden age of prosperity.
Cardiff does start as an iron exporting port, but it's really as a coal exporting port that it becomes one of the most largest and most well-known ports in the world. And that's largely as a result of the activities of the second Marquis of Bute. He encouraged his lands to be used for coal exploitation, but he also took it a stage further. He also took an active role in developing an infrastructure from Cardiff to be able to export the coal. He died in 1848 when his son, who became the third Marquis of Bute, was a very, very young child.
The third Marquis of Bute developed his father's legacy, undertaking an ambitious redesign of Cardiff Castle and the landscaping of Roath Park. All of this was made possible by the vast fortune that came from Cardiff Bay's coal trade.
And indeed, it's estimated that the third Marquis of Bute, as a result of all the fortune, became the richest man in the world. It's estimated that Cardiff would have been the largest coal exporting port in the world, and definitely one of the busiest in the world as well. If you have docks and if you have railways, it's also going to need labour as well. So there's a tremendous increase in the workforce as more and more docks are built and more coal is being exported.
The bay was changed by more than wealth, and soon its population underwent an equally dramatic change. Two people who've spent their lives in the area tell us more.
Cardiff, around about 1900, was the place where people immigrated to. This was the place, not Canada, Australia. Cardiff was the place where they came in their hundreds from all over the country and all over the world, you know.
And the good thing about this, with all the nationalities we had here, we never seen colour, all we seen was faces. That's how you got to know it, by their faces, not by their colour. Colour didn't mean a thing.
These dock workers and sailors from all over the world settled close to the harbour in an area known as Tiger Bay.
And it emerged as a place for merchant navy seamen and dock workers and captains and so on, for the people who worked at sea and the docks. And quite quickly, it became a multi-ethnic community.
Traces of the wealth that the export of coal generated can still be detected in the buildings that surround Cardiff Bay.
The very size of the buildings give you some idea of the wealth that was being created, at least in terms of the capital being produced through the buying and selling of coal as well. If I was going to choose one building that said the most about how important the coal industry was to the rise of Cardiff and how Cardiff was in the world in the late 19th, early 20th century, it's this building, the Coal Exchange building here in the middle of Mount Stewart Square, built in 1886 and then extended in 1911-12 and lavishly redecorated and redesigned inside.
Someone who has great admiration for the architecture of these buildings is the Cardiff-born star of Casualty, Suzanne Packer.
I think Mount Stewart Square probably is one of the most interesting places in this area. I know it's a little bit further along from the Roath Basin, but I find those buildings, obviously they really show how wealthy Cardiff was. And that's a lovely reminder of how incredible, when it was really thriving, this area must have looked, because the buildings are so incredible. And what's great, I think, coming back, is seeing how these have been redeveloped.
Tiger Bay and Butetown became a melting pot as different cultures, cuisines, religions, and of course music existed side by side.
My parents, when they arrived in the late 50s, they came here for dances, to clubs.
Music has a long history in Butetown, music that's interesting and diverse, and created a number of singers and musicians, the most famous of whom is Shirley Bassey.
And you look back and you say, now, what started it all off, you know? We were poor, and that's hard. But that was a good background for my way up the ladder to success.
In Butetown, many years ago, it would have been possible, for example, to eat French food and Maltese food and Chinese food and Arab food and Indian food, just walking up and down Butte Street.
People who came into Tiger Bay would go back with a memory of having a lovely meal in a Cairo restaurant or in the Chinese restaurant. Cairo Cafe was a mixture of two things, a seaman's lodging house and also an eating house. It wasn't a cafe in what you would sort of carve. You could pop in for a snack or a cup of tea, but it was an eating house for Arabs and the local people.
The Cairo Cafe also had a zawiya, which is a prayer room, and that was there before the first mosque opened in Butetown. First mosque opened in 1947 or 1948. This was also, I think, officially the second oldest mosque in the UK.
The streets were full of well, what I realise now were foreign to other people, foreigners to other people. To me, were just the normal denizens. You'd hear different languages, you'd hear Arabic spoken, you'd hear this, that and the other. And we accepted it as normal. I mean, it takes a long time to realise that other people don't see this as quite normal in a city like Cardiff.
Someone who has family links with the area is Mark Hallett, one of the people in charge of the building project at Port Tiger and Roath Loch.
It's great to hear how many people have a family link with the site. And indeed, within my own family, my mother, who was a very young lady in the late 1950s, worked for the Dock Labour Board in St Andrew's Crescent in the city centre. But every Friday she used to come down to Roath Basin, as it was known then, with an armed guard and hundreds of thousands of pounds in cash to pay out the dockers. She said, although it was a very rough and ready environment, that the dockers were true gentlemen, and there was more bad language back at the office in the city centre than she experienced in the docks. That might have been because she would have refused to pay them if she had any trouble, but she still looks back fondly on memories like that.
Although Tiger Bay held fond memories for some, others viewed the area very differently.
You'd find out as you sort of stepped out beyond your environment that people viewed you in a slightly different different way.
Most of the time I found that the people who made these comments had no idea what Tiger Bay was like.
No.
No idea.
No. Once you were down Bute Street under that railway bridge, you were home. Under the railway bridge, that was your front door, and you were back home again. Yeah. Back in that cosy atmosphere, you know?
You couldn't find a finer place to live in than Tiger Bay.
But a change came to this close-knit community. By the 1960s, the coal trade was declining. As fewer ships came in, the docks became run down and abandoned.
The rise of Bute Town is connected to the rise in the coal trade and so on. And the decline of Bute Town is related to that as well, just like many communities in the valleys declined as a result of the decline of coal, so did Bute Town.
The once thriving community of Bute Town suffered from a lack of investment. People moved elsewhere, and the streets and parks were demolished to make way for new housing and high rises. A lot of the community spirit was also swept away.
That old-fashioned idea of standing on the doorstep and talking to a woman down the road or across the square or across the street was gone.
The old ladies used to fetch their kitchen chairs out on the street and sit there and chat.
Yeah, that was gone. And that took the heart out of Tiger Bay.
Yes, yeah.
Bute Town, as local people knew it, was largely knocked down and replaced by masonettes and tower blocks.
Now, when they built these flats and new houses, it was wonderful. You had indoor toilets, nice clean rooms, central heating if you could afford it at the time, and it was wonderful. But it had killed Tiger Bay.
Somebody decided that the ideal place for the tower blocks was where the park had been before. So it'd be as if someone decided to build a tower in the village green. So this kind of utopian ideal of the tower blocks turned out not to be such a good idea. So it wasn't just the decline of coal, but also literally the knocking over a community that led to its decline.
But you can't keep a tiger down. After years of neglect, Cardiff Bay became the focus of a massive regeneration project. In the 1980s, acres of wasteland were cleared to make way for brand new houses and apartments. All of this was made possible by the construction of the Cardiff Bay Barrage, an ambitious engineering project transforming mudflats into a man-made lake. For some residents, it was a controversial change, but it attracted big business. Hotels, bars and restaurants sprang up and visitors flocked to the once empty area. It became a home for the arts with the Wales Millennium Centre and a seat for government with the Welsh Assembly Senedd. In the 21st century, television drama arrived in the Bay. In 2005, Russell T Davies brought Doctor Who back as a flagship drama made in Wales by BBC Wales. One of its earliest locations was the Bay.
A mysterious blue box slap bang in the middle of town. What do? Walk past it. Now stop your nagging, let's go and explore.
What's the plan?
I don't know. Cardiff, early 21st century, and the wind's coming from the east. Trust me, safest place in the universe.
BBC in London had a policy of making more stuff in the regions, which I heartily applaud. I've worked in Manchester, I've worked in Wales, and I've always never lived in London, so I've always loved stuff being made in the regions.
Here was the BBC seemingly taking a big risk. You know, here is probably the biggest drama show that the BBC has ever had, and we're going to make it in Wales, which didn't have much of a track record in network drama, and we delivered. I mean, we delivered on an epic scale. There were many people who thought that Doctor Who, oh, you know, it's had its time, it can't come back, it can't be reborn, and look what happened. I mean, Doctor Who bigger and better than ever before.
It was almost like they were bringing a kind of a new, and I don't mean this in a bad sense, because it really has done a great deal for Wales and for Cardiff and for the Bay Area. It brought a huge kind of resurgence back to Wales. All of a sudden, BBC Wales was put back in the map, as was filming and production in Wales.
The television industry in Wales grew rapidly. In 2006, Torchwood didn't just show off Cardiff, but proudly made the Bay its home.
One of the things I was keen to do was actually show off Cardiff in stuff, because one of the problems with Doctor Who is that he travels all over the universe and he can only land in Cardiff so many times. I did it twice, and then that was kind of becoming incredible. So when Torchwood came along, I wanted to set it on my doorstep. And as a science fiction show, that goes all over the world. That's being shown in South Korea right now, and they're looking at Cardiff, and then they're looking at the sea, they're looking at the people, with the tower, with the Millennium Hall. I think that's brilliant. I think it's as much of an advert for the city as any proper tourist campaign.
Torchwood was again another huge thing for Cardiff, because as Doctor Who was just filmed here, Torchwood was about Cardiff. Torchwood originated in Cardiff, and the show showed the world what Cardiff looked like. People really, when I travel around the world now and I go different places, they always say to me, Cardiff looks like a fantastic place. And I always say, go and visit it.
It's funny because Torchwood kind of moved on after a while, and we blew it up and it went abroad and things like that. But there's kind of a lot of people here that remember it, and actually one of the characters in Torchwood was called Yanto Jones. It was the faithful coffee boy of the team, who died sadly in a great big adventure called Children of Earth. He now, apparently, I'm told, he has a shrine in the Bay. There's a place where people go and leave flowers and poems and their memories of Yanto, which is kind of a strange souvenir, I think. But I'm glad it's made a mark on the landscape anyway.
As the television industry went from strength to strength, the landscape of the Bay was set to change again. With so much going on, a permanent home for drama was needed, and Roath Basin was selected. Just across the harbour from Butetown, the historic coal dock would now be the site for Roath Lock Drama Village.
I suppose the ambition for Roath Lock started with Doctor Who, really, and BBC Wales was being led by Menna Richards, and it just became this thing that we needed more space. We kept moving studios, and every time we moved, we needed a bigger TARDIS. Every time we moved, another production came along. Here's Sarah Jane, she needs a base, they need a spaceship, they need an attic. It's just ambition.
Armies of local builders, designers and engineers worked to realise this ambition. It took over 100 kilometres of cabling and enough concrete to cover 4 football pitches to complete the 4-acre site.
The logistical exercise to realise a major 910 studio site was an extraordinary piece of project management and organisation.
We had a fixed end date to meet Casualty's filming, and it was great to see the team pulling together and working collaboratively and meeting that end date.
It was amazing actually watching it grow from sort of a wasteland when I first came to visit, to the sort of shell of studios, and then these fantastic sets springing up, and then watching them getting populated with props and dressed properly as well. Really, was immensely satisfying.
211, take 1. A&B cameras, common mark.
Being the first production to move into the studios was very exciting and a great honour. I spent 3 months on the production in Bristol before we then picked up the whole production, 20 years worth of it, and moved it over to Rothlock in the Bay.
Struggling to shift the air, it's actually in the 70s. Okay, let's get...
Although not everyone was happy about the relocation, the change meant a lot to local girl Suzanne Packer.
I live in Cardiff and I was commuting back and forward from Cardiff to Bristol. So when I heard that this was a possibility, it was like a dream come true.
Yeah, reset to go from the top.
Casualty being here as part of the Drama Village, I think will put Cardiff on the map even more.
Got it, thank you.
It'll have such a great reputation because usually certainly internationally, when people think of Britain, they always think of London, and Cardiff doesn't figure. And I think now, it'll have such a great impact. People will know Cardiff, and I think that's amazing.
And action!
Casualty regular Tenby-born Charles Dale has seen the benefits of the new sets.
With the new sets, we certainly have more room. There were places in Bristol where if you had a dolly with a camera on it and a